Well, good morning.
Good morning.
It's great to be back here at long last, despite a false start in November due to COVID. But we're here now, thanks be to God. And I was noticing this morning when Yunu and Es came in with little Maris, the synchronicity between this day and what we're celebrating on the church calendar of the Feast of the Presentation, because we're presenting this little one to the Lord as well. And I also thought about the fact that, with all the preparation that you have done in waiting for this little baby to be born into the world, you're also today turning a page, because while he is your child and the child of your family, he today also becomes part of this community and part of the Christian community. And that turns the page, really. And you're, I'm sure, like all parents, you are wondering about, well, what will his life be like? What will it be like for him as he grows up? And what will he be? And who will he become, etc. Which I'm quite sure that was what Mary and Joseph probably felt about Jesus, knowing all these wonderful things that happened about him and these words that were being said about him in the temple. They were wondering about that. And so I thought, as I was preparing for today, I was thinking about that song of Simeon that we hear in the liturgy of the church every night at Compline, and sometimes at evening prayer as well. But Lord, lettest thou thy servant depart in peace according to your word. For mine eyes have seen thy salvation, which thou prepared before the sight of all people, right? So, but how did he know that? That's the question that I always wondered about. How did he saw a baby, and he says, I have seen your salvation, which you prepared the sight of the people. I think he turned to page 2 because he had behind him all of the tradition of Israel, everything that brought him to that moment. And then he turned the page to see a slight glimmer of what God had in mind for the future. There was a crack in the door, as it were, or you know how sometimes you look inside a fence and you can see what's inside that fence, but you can only see the little bit that's there in your field of vision. And so I wonder about that today at St. John's as we are coming to the close of our ministry here, and we're turning a page as to what the future is going to be like. And I think back about all of the years before this, many Sundays as we would walk in that procession down the side aisle, I would look at that painting of Dr. Davidson, that's at the back of the church, who was the builder of this building. And what did he see in those days, right? What vision would he have seen for the future as this congregation turned the page? And actually, when the construction began, the cornerstone of this building was laid 100 years ago in 1923. What did those people who laid that cornerstone dream of and envision for the future as they turned the page on that day in 2023? And then the dedication of this building 2 years later on this very weekend in 1925. And we think about all the other rectors and people that have come through this place over the course of all of those years, and who, upon their leaving, turned the page with expectant hope about what God was going to do in the future. And so, although Simeon wasn't able to see the full future, he had a glimpse of it. And I think that's what we're seeing today, that we're turning a page and seeing a glimpse of what the Holy Spirit has in mind for the future of this place. And Father Dan, I know you've been talking about thinking about the Simeon song as well.
As a matter of fact, I was. So I'd like you all to keep the image of Simeon before you as you enter into this process of transition. You've already been in one, but you'll be on it for a while. And what I'd like you to remember is, we're told that Simeon is looking for the consolation of Israel. He's this utterly faithful person who's looking for the consolation of Israel, and he goes to the temple The center of the center of the center of Jewish identity, of the nation, of the household of faith of Israel, is in this place. It's where they experienced God in the most powerful way. It was a place of identity. He goes into the temple seeking consolation, but the Spirit comes upon him, and he is given a vision of a bigger God. Not his own consolation, not the consolation for the people he knows, his own folks, but there is another image. It's the glory of Israel in this child, but it's also a light to the Gentiles. They don't belong in there. It's not about Jewish identity, but yet this revelation by the Spirit says, have a bigger God. There are more people. And in that moment in the gospel, where he talks about the light, this child will be the light to the Gentiles, that is a nascent moment where the weaving of other peoples and cultures and thoughts into the story of Israel begins. And that line of adding people and culture continues all the way through to this day, to this quilt, where the people of St. John's have celebrated Black History Month by adding this quilt. And I'll talk about that more in a moment. But these are the people who were here from all different kinds of cultures, from all different places over the globe. And they laid their life upon the altar here in thanksgiving. They gave of themselves, and God welcomed them in. You know, there are many, many ways. Today's a very rich day. It's also the beginning of Black History Month. And there are many ways to approach Black History Month. It's just so rich and so full. But for Episcopalians, I think we almost have to begin with Dr. King. Because in our calendar of the saints, we're told that Dr. King is a prophet. He's a 20th century man who has been proclaimed a prophet. He is a prophet. He's up in the window over there in a 12-foot tall window. He's not there just because he was handsome. He has something to say. And he is not the Hallmark card person that he is made out to be. Dr. King is a prophet who made people uncomfortable. He was one of the most hated men in America, as his daughters want to remind us. But today, for us, for Episcopalians to listen to what is the prophet speaking to us about, you know, he was unforgiving. He was upfront and clear that ministers and that their congregations could not be people who were satisfied with the consolation of being nice people. You had to work the work, walk the walk, and really weave the history of the full history, the difficult history of African Americans into your congregation, into your life, and to be there when African American people in this country needed you. And if you're a nice person, that's just not enough. Consolation is not enough. Get a bigger God. And so sometimes, I'll speak for myself, I need to hear that because sometimes I would go for consolation, not the bigger God. Maybe I didn't listen enough. I could have been a better listener. You taught me to be a better listener. So if I wasn't listening clear enough or taking the risk enough, I apologize to you all here today. But this place has been weaving people into the life of the church for a long, long time. It's in its DNA. In this period, it's very important for you to understand and know your history. I want to tell you something that some of you might not know, and some of you remember. We talked about it before. In the 1960s, Father Carter was the priest here. And it was a very transitional time in the city of Los Angeles. And there was a man who came here who found God here. Faithful, giving, kind, hardworking, a leader. And Father Carter asked him to be his warden. And Father Carter was, in a short notice, summoned to the California Club, which is downtown here, which at that time was the center of power in Los Angeles. And then the men on his vestry said, we understand that, his name's not out of my head, let's say Alfred. You're going to ask Alfred to be your warden. And Father Carter said, yes, I am. And they said, do you know that he's a convert from Judaism? He said, yes, I do. They said, you may have him as your warden, but all of us and all of our money will leave. Father Carter said, adios. Or as we would say in Long Island, see you, wouldn't want to be here. Bye. And what happened? We're all sitting here today. We're still here. The sons of a dying worldview gathered around to exclude the next person willing to give their life to Christ. But Father Carter and Alfred, and more importantly, the people of this place, entered into a prophetic ministry. They saw a bigger God. It was not just about them, but it was about the glory of God in the city of Los Angeles, welcoming all people, weaving this person's history into this place. And that's why sometimes, in a very small, very delicate way, we've tried to weave small bits of Jewish liturgy into our worship so that in this place, in this sacred place, that beautiful religion could be held up and honored after it had been degraded all those 60 years ago. The people of this place did that, and I think that was a watershed moment, because soon the sons of a dying age sort of disappeared, and all kinds of people came here, and they were woven into the life of this place, into the life of the people of God in this place, and they laid their lives upon the altar. They're extraordinary people. Everyone has a picture of the church. They had their own picture. When they came here, what they did here, and where they're from. Where they're from. And many of these people some are still here. Many are gone. But they're remembered for what they did. These people from all over the earth who found God here, laid their lives upon the altar, and prepared for us to be here now to celebrate the wonderful diversity of the city of Los Angeles. That we wove into this place stories of people searching for God, not from one culture. There's no British aristocrat on that page there. I mean, Prince Harry lives 2 hours away. I'm sure you'd love to have him, but he's the only British aristocrat that was in Los Angeles. But there are millions of people longing for God from all different kinds of backgrounds. These people prepared the fertile ground for an open and inclusive place. They prepared the fertile ground for the groundbreaking, visionary leadership of Mother Gwen Giebord, who invited all kinds of people into this space. All kinds of people. People thought we were all nuts, but she had a vision that this was a house of prayer for all people, and she incarnated that with all kinds of things here. People said, you had like 40 Muslims at Christmas Eve? Yeah, we did. It was wonderful. You had a Sufi dancer on your altar? Yeah, on this platform, we did. Woven into God's history were all kinds of people, and these people prepared a place for culture. You can't come to a place and worship God and feel like your culture is not wanted or accepted or honored. You know, I'm very grateful to Dr. Gravis. For many reasons, but for every sort of St. Patrick's Day, there's a wonderful hymn that the undertone of the hymn is that it's a Danny Boy. And we sang that around St. Patrick's Day, and it made me feel close to my culture. It made me remember my grandparents. It made me remember my parents. So maybe some of you have had that moment too, when we wave the flags of Belize in this place, and we celebrate Belize in September. And people celebrate the brave journey they made to come to this country. And, you know, the Belizean anthem is not in the hymnal, but it's wonderful. When we celebrate the gift of Day of the Dead here, where we learn and incarnate the remembrance of our loved ones in a Latin American way, and we live in a Latin American city. When we celebrate Our Lady of Guadalupe here, almost has nothing to do with Our Lady of Guadalupe, but the center of that is that somehow God has a bigger picture, and God chose an uneducated, lower-class person who was dark-skinned to reveal God's message through Mary. That's what that day is about. God has a bigger picture for us, not just consolation, but a bigger picture. To celebrate Black History Month and Absalom Jones, one of the gifts that I've been given here is a new, well, not so new now, but a love of spirituals that I never thought that I had. Did you ever bury anybody, ever, without a spiritual at the end? I'm going to have one at my funeral. That was a gift that you all gave me from the culture of the Black church. We have allowed people from the trans community, people said, oh, you have trans community people singing at your church? Yes, we do. People come here and sing songs of liberation within the Eucharist in a church, in a larger Christian culture that is persecuting them. Mm-hmm. This reading of people's culture and lives and memory and history happen at this altar. And God is glad for that. It's a gift. I understand that the quilt that Earl Canon Earl Munger had the idea for so many years ago will be expanded. It's time to expand it. Because you never know who else will come here. You never know that. And these people on this quilt have changed this place. You are changing this place. You will have a new priest here. Priests make all kinds of promises when they get ordained, but they never, ever promise to be a curator of a museum. They don't. Canon Melissa, do they promise that? Do you know anybody? No, we don't have that skill because we don't need it. Because we're a living community. We're not a museum. We're weaving people into the life-giving gospel. The living Lord is waiting for this congregation in the future. Mm-hmm. But he's not asking you to be a blank slate. When you go out to meet him, bring the quilt. Bring the saints. And ask God, what bigger picture do you have? Here are our saints. Here's what we've done. Here's who we are at this moment. Help us to move from consolation to your glory. Bring the saints. And God will bring people here for a new vision, a different vision, but a vision that's built on the history of this marvelous place. Not a museum, but a living community. Now, Father Mark, there's another quilt about to be made. And the quilt that is about to be made is only going to be able to be made because of the gifts that you have given us as we worship God in this place together and took risks and did sort of sometimes crazy things, but welcomed the larger communities. And I have learned, and like Father Mark can say for himself, so much. I a much better priest now than I ever was when first time I stepped in this place. So I thank you for that. I thank you for that. And the journey wasn't always easy, let's not sugarcoat it, but it was wonderful. It was wonderful. Like all things, all wonderful things sometimes are hard, but it was life-giving. So you want to talk about the new quilt?
Well, I mean, you know, we all are busy
sewers, I think, and it's a crazy quilt, right? You all will continue sewing this quilt into the future, but there will be a side panel for the work we do. As you are doing your stuff, we will be doing our stuff as well. We'll be sewing our own quilt from this quilt, right, into Long Island, where we already are going to be part of a congregation in Port Washington, where we're going to be there for 6 months to help them revision their community. They're in a place where we don't know where we're going. Their rector is on a leave of absence, a medical leave, and the bishop has asked us to come to help them engage in sewing their quilt into the future, to turn a page for them. Then perhaps the most important new challenge is that we've been in conversation with Provenzano, the Bishop of Long Island, and it was really Father Dan's idea to take a church that has been closed and restart it. We're probably going to be doing that starting in the fall. We're going to do this wonderful work of sewing a new quilt in a place and totally bringing a new place back to life, we hope, certainly with the help of many others there, but to do that work in the Diocese of Long Island. But all, with you all there with us, for the work that we all did together, you have transformed us into being able to do that for you and with you during this time. And we'll be making our own crazy quilt, but it comes out of the cloth of this one. So I think, to conclude, I think what the very short prayer that Dag Hammarskjöld is said to have prayed, I think is really important for you all and for us. That for all that has been, we give thanks. For all that will be, we say yes. Amen.